session. And thank you very much for coming. My name is Hal Nolan, and I am the chair. Our WPCC members are seated here: Laura Peterson, Omar Francis, Carl Leary, Sean Gray, and Vice Chair Pat Kennedy. Other prominent contributors here are Shirley Wagner, our CDM consultant, Mary Jane Engel, former CRAHD director, and Shirley Mickens, our part-time clerk. Among the speakers also are so important to us is Dennis Greci, James Monopoli, and Wade Thomas. All these people play a major role in taking care of wastewater issues. To give you an idea of how long and how many times we have been involved in this session, this pile over here are the studies that have been done starting back in the 70s. Some of these things are repetitious. Some studies, the people have said the same thing. Others have taken different approaches. There's even more than this because they're supporting the slide projector. So this is an idea of what's been going on. Thousands of dollars have been spent on this activity. Thousands of dollars of your money and state money, because the state has paid 55% of these proceedings. All of this, and nothing has happened. All this is all by the wayside. We believe we're moving finally toward a solution. We've got our first speaker, which is James Monopoli. He'll discuss the role of CRAHD. That's the Connecticut River Area Health District, which encompasses Clinton, Old Saybrook, and Deep River. He is a director, and he'll tell us what his group is doing and how they're contributing to the wastewater situation and what CRAHD is all about. Jim?
Thank you, Hal. Good evening, everyone. My name is James Monopoli. I'm Director of Health for the Connecticut River Area Health District. I've only been here less than a year, but I have about 25 years of experience in public health. I always take the opportunity to let people know what a local health district does, so I'm going to take that liberty right now to do that. You know, we're the agency who inspects your restaurants to try to make sure your food is safe. We're inspecting your daycare centers. We're monitoring your public beaches. We look at well water analysis for individual wells. We promote well-being in the community. We're promoting healthy behaviors such as skin cancer prevention right now. That's one of our focus areas. We try to prevent lead poisoning in children. And we also are looking, we're responsible for planning for public health emergencies. That's just a sample of what we do. We're very busy at the health district with a lot of activities. But one of those activities is on-site sewage disposal. We're responsible for regulating on-site sewage disposal for smaller septic systems, generally under 2,000 gallons per day. And what that means is your residential septic systems and your small commercial systems are regulated by your local health department or district. I'm just going to get into a little bit of what we do. I think as time goes on, our role will become more clear, but I'll just give you a synopsis of what we do as far as on-site sewage disposal. We start with site evaluations of undeveloped lots, or even lots that need repair, existing homes that need repair. The first step we take is a site evaluation. We analyze the soil conditions, to see what the capacity of that lot is based on the soil conditions for sewage disposal. After that, we look at a proposal from either an engineer or a licensed installer to install a septic system on that property. And after review, once we go through that review and approve whatever is proposed, we'll issue an installation permit. Once the installation permit is issued, then we follow through with on-site inspections of the installation to make sure it meets the requirements of the public health code. And then subsequently to that, we issue a document called a permit to discharge, which really is an approval to now use the system. And any limitations upon the installation, such as maybe an undersized system on a repair, we document those conditions on the permit to discharge. In addition to that, we are regulating failing and malfunctioning septic systems throughout the town. In last fiscal year, we issued 72 permits for septic repairs, which is a pretty substantial number. We did over 300 repairs district-wide last year. We issue notices of violation to correct malfunctioning septic systems. And if we have to get to that point, we will, and we'll follow it through to make sure that these systems are properly repaired. Part of that order to repair includes abating an overflow, so we're not maintaining a nuisance condition until that system, in fact, does get repaired. We also review and approve property improvement projects. We commonly refer to that, at least in the health arena, as B100A approval. And what that is if someone chooses to make improvements to their home, we have to evaluate that lot for sewage disposal capacity before the approval could be given. And the reason for that is we want to make sure that the improvement on that lot is not exceeding the capacity of the lot as far as sewage disposal is concerned. Related to that, I mentioned we also issue construction permits for water supplies, private wells primarily, and then subsequent to the approval to actually drill a well, we look at the water analysis to make sure it's meeting the requirements of the public health code. As far as CRAHD and the WPCC, I'm looking forward to working with them. I think you have a nice group of people here who are very dedicated. And I think their approach has been very good so far in our short time here. We're willing to provide technical assistance to this project. We are responsible specifically for what I just talked about, and we hope to be able to blend that into whatever plan develops. I'm sure we'll be playing a role in some type of on-site sewage disposal regulation. A lot of times with these local projects, such as the one in Old Saybrook, there are local requirements put into a local ordinance in addition to the requirements of the public health code. So we'll try to incorporate those in our process of approval and review. In addition to the health code, we'll look at any local requirements that are passed and make sure those are part of what we're doing. And we'll just assist in ordinance development. I'm sure there'll be some ordinance development coming out of this group here, and it'll just be a guidance document for what we're all trying to do. So thank you for listening. I appreciate it. It's good to be here. Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. We do have an ordinance. We do have a pump out ordinance, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Our next speaker is Dennis Greci, the supervisor in the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. He'll give us a little background and a little history. He's been involved in shoreline activities for many years. Dennis?
Thank you, Val. Well, as Hal pointed out, I have been involved. That pile there pretty much describes my history as well, because I've got most of those at my desk, with one or two exceptions. And it has been. I've been working with Clinton since 1987 at this point. And I've seen you move through a number of these reports and either approve them or disapprove them, vote them up, vote them down. And we're here trying to find one that we can vote through and approve, that everybody can live with. We've talked about that from time to time. The studies, as we've said, have gone from everything from a large-scale sewer system covering multiple towns, multiple times those reports have come through, down to what we're going to call decentralized systems, which have community sewer system options, down to sewer avoidance. And you'll excuse me, I hate the term because it doesn't ring right. I like on-site management better, but it means the same thing. All of these reports have had different components of those. Your current pump-out ordinance does have components of the sewer avoidance program in it. And we did work with the town to get to that point. So that's one step forward. We are looking at this point, or you are looking, and I've been working with you to do so, at more localized solutions. Most of you have been in previous discussions we've had here where we've talked in the past about what options are available, all the way from what we're going to call the big pipe, which would be a single treatment plant with a discharge to the Hammond acid, all the way down to individual on-site repairs that Old Saybrook is doing right now, and discuss the range of options in between. And your consultant later tonight is going to be talking more about what those options actually are. So I'm not going to belabor that. And as Hal mentioned, the department is providing 55% grants to pay for the cost of all these studies that have been done, and that's a continuing process. I'm going to leave it at that at this point. I will be here to answer questions, and we'll be doing questions at the end of the presentation. So we'll leave it at that for now and turn it back to Hal. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. I did forget to mention that there will be question and answers at the end of the program, and we'll do our best to try to answer them. Our next speaker is our consultant, Kristie Wagner. She's a PE, and she's got a whole bunch of other letters after her name. I don't know exactly what they mean. We work directly with her on a day-to-day basis, and she has and will continue to serve the town because she's done one heck of a job for us. I don't know how we would have existed and got as far as we did, or we have done, without her help. Kristie?
Well, thank you. That was a nice intro. I'm going to start with a slide that's not directly related to our current project, but we wanted to kind of make this, again, a general informational session for everyone in the town. So this first slide is about the WPCC's pump-out ordinance, as it's informally called. Again, it's not part of the current study. It's already passed. It's already in existence. We just wanted to give kind of a quick overview of what the purpose is and how it works. Basically, it requires septic pump out and inspection by a licensed septic tank cleaner at least every 5 years. And that applies to every septic system in town. The cleaner, this is an interesting point, the cleaner must be registered with the WPCC. There's a list of registered cleaners on the WPCC's website. The reason for that is because the registered cleaners are kind of up to speed on the data tracking. The system called CRAHD that the WPCC and I believe the Health District also uses to help track information in terms of when systems have been pumped out. So if you happen to use a pumper who's not on the registered approved list, there's a chance that your information won't be properly pumped, you won't get credit for your pump out, and you'll get additional notices and requests to pump that you may not actually need to deal with. Shelley Mickens, who is the WPCC clerk, administers the program. She is always available to answer questions. If you call the WPCC's phone number here at Town Hall, she'll help you any way you can with any questions about the pump out program. Quick update on the success of the program in the last couple of years. There are about 5,600 septic systems in town. At the start of the program, there were about 2,500 that were either not pumped in the last 5 years or that didn't have records of being pumped in the last 5 years. So Shirley had the task of sending out 2,500 postcards, starting, I guess it was probably about 2 years ago now. And that program has resulted in about 1,456 pump outs in the last couple of years since that's been implemented. So right now there are just a little over 1,000 systems in town that have not been properly pumped in the last 5 years, and those owners are receiving second kind of warning notices. It's important to note, again, it's an ordinance, CAST applies to all septic systems in town, even seasonal residents, everyone has to comply with this. So just wanted to touch on that. If anyone has questions about it, probably address them at the end, but if you have a specific question about your property, Shirley Mickens at the town hall is the one to call about that. Okay, so moving on to the real meat of this presentation, the wastewater facilities plan. Essentially, the goal of this plan is to develop a comprehensive plan for wastewater management in the town of Clinton. Basically, we hope to write the last report on this stack here. It will build on some things that have been said in the past, but we do have kind of a new direction, some different focuses these days than in years past. We'll touch on each of these items in subsequent slides, but basically the tasks at hand right now are refining the areas of concern and which areas need off-site treatment, finding sites for groundwater discharge of treated wastewater, treated, emphasis on the treated, evaluating different treatment alternatives, and trying to balance the need in all the needs areas with the available capacity of subsurface disposal sites. Our real goal is to find the most economical and effective solution for this town. Again, years of studies with no infrastructure created is not an effective use of taxpayer money anymore. So we're really trying to get to something that will be publicly acceptable, approvable, and buildable. So this is a specific activity going on right now, refining the areas of concern. I don't know if I don't recall if Hal introduced Mary Jane Engel. She's one of the key contributors right now. She's the retired director of the health district. And right now she's acting as a kind of outside consultant to the WPCC with a kind of formidable task of searching through drawers and drawers of paper files at Town Hall and at the health district to pull out information on soils and depth to groundwater and other physical conditions in each of the neighborhoods. I'll step back and say that this map that you see in a couple locations, and it was also on the slide that Dennis spoke of a few minutes ago, it just highlights in different colors the different areas of town that have been identified in previous studies as potential areas of concern. Sometimes we call them needs areas, sometimes we call them study areas. They're identified areas that we are looking at as part of this study. What has come to light is that they're not all equal. Some are certainly more in need of an off-site solution than others, but they're all areas that we need to look at and have a plan for. So Mary Jane's work as part of this file searching is to basically pull out any relevant information that can tell us which areas actually have pretty decent soils that might be able to handle continued on-site systems versus areas that are either too rocky, too wet, or too densely developed to support properly functioning on-site systems. Then the goal, again, is to reach educated and substantiated conclusions about off-site solutions versus on-site improvements. So essentially, what we're really doing is taking these needs areas and trying to prioritize them, which ones need some help first. As a side note, something that has come out of this has been, a kind of a different way to look at things, and there might be some areas in town that currently have difficult septic systems as well as well water. In some of those areas, it might be possible that extending public water to them would open up more physical space for properly functioning septic leaching fields. So it's one possible way of reaching a solution for certain areas of town. So that's kind of what we're trying to do, is think outside the box, consider all possibilities to come up with economical solutions for all of these areas. I'm going to turn this over to Wade Thomas for just one slide. He is a geologist. He works for Nathan Jacobson Associates. They're working with us as well on this project. Wade is the geologist who's really responsible for some of the on-site testing activities when we're looking for sites for potential subsurface discharge of treated wastewater.
Thank you, Chrissy. Typically what we're looking for is we're looking for nice sandy soils with gravels and that, really clean material, doesn't have a lot of silt. The bulk of the soils in the town here, as I'm sure you all well know, is glacial till, very dense, very low hydraulic conductivity, not conducive to wastewater disposal. What we're looking for is like deposits that formed as outwash deposits or stratified drifts, typically in the tidal marshes, the river and stream valleys, that sort of thing, where you get nice thicknesses of clean, saturated material. And ideally, it would be good if we have unsaturated material above it. And that's what we're looking for. And so what we'll do is we'll start looking at site published information, bedrock geology, superficial geology, other resource data, to see what kind of soils we might have on the site. We walk the site. Then if it looks favorable, we go on to test pits. If we do test pits and we got greater than 10 feet to bedrock or groundwater, then we move on to the next phase, which is groundwater monitoring wells, auger borings, which could go deep. Some in town, we've gone as deep as 70, 80 feet of material. And what we're looking for, we're sampling continuously throughout the profile. We want to see nice clean material without thick layers of fine material, which can impact things. We put a well in. If it looks good beyond that, we'll do testing on the well, develop a conceptual model, and basically look at the sites and figure out what order of magnitude hydraulic capacity they have. And that's about as far as we've gotten on our sites here, but we're looking to go a little further, run hydraulic load tests where we actually simulate the leaching system configuration, and we load fresh water to it and see how the aquifer below responds. If it's favorable, then we can further bracket the hydraulic capacity of it, develop a three-dimensional groundwater model, and then we can use the data we've gotten from that to run simulations to get the ultimate capacity. But we're not at that point. That's we're not going. We're hoping to get there. Thank you.
Thank you. So the bulk of the work that Wade was talking about, the real goal there is to find sites in town where we would be able to send treated wastewater from some areas that might not be able to handle septic systems appropriately moving forward. So, on the same topic here, basically what we're doing is looking at all parcels in town. We started with about 299 parcels in town that were greater than 5 acres in size. And as Wade said, did some screening and have done some testing. We've been working with private property owners basically since about 2010. Initially, we walked dozens and dozens of properties to take a look at what was really there. And now we've also done some testing that Wade described on a handful of them. At the moment, there are between 3 and 5 that appear to have significant capacity, parcels that we're actually really interested in, and a few more that we are interested in getting onto to do more testing. And they're all of those are highlighted on this map up here on the screen. I think there are 7 parcels in total right now that are either confirmed that we are interested in them or that we are interested in getting on them to do some testing. This, if anyone's attended previous public information sessions, the last one was over a year ago, and this same topic was discussed. Basically, we've had a couple of very dry spring seasons, this year and last year, and dry conditions are not really conducive to the type of testing that we're looking to do. We've also had some difficulties getting onto some of the properties. Again, we're working with private property owners asking for cooperation, and not everything always goes as smoothly and as quickly as we would like it to. So, the process is ongoing. We're trying to pull all the pieces of the puzzle together, but we are still in the process of testing sites. Another one of the ongoing activities that ties right into this, 4 areas that require, or that may require off-site treatment, localized sewer systems and disposal at one of these sites. We're going to have to develop some sort of treatment facility to produce high-quality effluent. We're really just kind of in the beginning of that stage because as we're trying to refine the needs areas, that will give us a better idea of what levels of flow we're expected to see from any of these locations. But I just wanted to put this slide up there because it shows some pictures of actual kind of small-scale, community, decentralized type treatment facilities. The point here really is that a treatment facility doesn't have to look like a big, ugly factory. The one in the lower left, that nice kind of Cape Cod looking house, that's actually a 30,000 gallon per day wastewater treatment facility on Cape Cod. So I wanted to show some of these pictures to maybe put some fears to rest about people who might be concerned about putting a treatment facility somewhere in their community. They can look like this. We're talking about, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 fairly small facilities, covered, odor control, you know, very unobtrusive facilities that will help solve your problems. So, in conclusion, we do have a possible range of solutions at this point. As we said, we're still in the planning stage, nothing is a conclusion. But the range of solutions that we might expect to see here, some combination of sewers to community treatment facilities and disposal sites. And again, we're finding those areas that are most in need with the available treatment capacity or the available disposal capacity at those sites. And a note again, the treatment facilities will provide a high level of treatment, including disinfection. In some areas, enhancement of on-site septic systems might be feasible. That might solve the problem in certain areas of town. In other areas, just an inspection and or monitoring program of existing systems might be a possibility as well. One thing that's definite is the continuation of that pump out ordinance that we talked about earlier. It might be tweaked over time, but in theory, the general concept of it to continue a responsible septic system maintenance is something that the town is committed to continuing to enforce. Quick note on schedule. The refinement of the needs areas is an ongoing process right now. We'll be pretty much done with that, we think, by the end of this year. However, the subsurface disposal sites testing will probably continue through next spring. We're praying for wet spring, maybe even a wet fall. We can do some things during wet fall seasons as well. But the goal is that we will have a better idea of some of the sites for disposal by the middle of next year. And at that point, we can do an analysis of the different treatment alternatives, the cost effectiveness of on-site versus off-site systems for on-site versus off-site systems, for certain areas. And that will probably go on through the end of 2014. And then we have kind of a vague schedule for public outreach and approvals through the year 2015. This is something that is going to be very important to the success of this project. In addition to the WPCC, the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, the Connecticut River Area Health District, Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and most importantly, the residents of the town. This is a significant undertaking. There will be more public information sessions, public hearings, referendums in the future about this project, and we need to make sure that we have adequate time really allowed to do that so that this project actually becomes something that can be implemented in Clinton. With that said, I think it's reasonable that conceptual design of some portion of this project would be commencing sometime in 2015 or 2016. That is the end of our official presentation. I'm going to give it back to Matt Kennedy at this point to moderate the question and answer session. Matt is the Vice Chairman of the WPCC.
Thank you, Kristie. Hi, my name is Matt Kennedy. As Kristie said, I'm the Vice Chairman of the Commission. And just like to open up the floor out here to questions. We have a handful of experts. We have our Commission and myself. And guess I'll set one ground rule is that I'll choose somebody. I'll pick you guys out. I'll give everybody a chance to speak. And we'll try to limit it to one question if we can so that everybody gets a chance to talk. And we'll all be here afterwards, so there'll be plenty of opportunity for some one-on-one question taking. So we have some questions out there. I saw your hand first.
When she went through the schedule, I was just curious. You mentioned referendums. When in that schedule do referendums start to happen?
I think the earliest a referendum would be sometime in 2015. The dates are, we don't even want to throw actual dates out, but I think, yeah, we need to get other town approvals and DEP approval of the plan, and then referendums would come after that.
Okay.
I don't have to always come back to
On your draft display, do the colors indicate any priority or areas of concern?
No.
You mentioned that there were areas that had some priority.
No, they do not. The colors on that map are just to differentiate the different areas that we talk about kind of internally. As far as the map goes, every area was just an identified area to look at. We will in the future have, as part of the actual plan, there will be a prioritization and a designation given to each of those areas, but right now that is definitely a fluid process.
Thank you.
Ladies first.
I just want to ask about a referendum. Are the residents only going to get to vote something up or down as in a final plan, or will there be alternatives presented for a referendum? Like, choice 1, 2, or 3, and residents would vote on that?
I think it's very possible that we might have several plans, and again, get the townspeople's feelings toward those plans. That we really haven't made any hard and fast decisions on that yet. But yes, we're going to be looking at plenty of different proposals, and we should share all of those proposals with the townspeople.
Good evening. My name is Anselmo DeLea. I'm the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission here in town. I have some question about the areas of concern total, which your booklet here references as 600,000 gallons. Is that a hard and fast figure? And if it is, do the 3 to 7 areas that you mentioned as having potential for resolving these issues able to handle that kind of capacity?
I will take that one. Yep, so the 600,000 is an estimate based on the number of properties in all of these areas total. That does not factor in the work that Mary Jane and the commission is doing right now to prioritize those areas and figure out if some of them can actually stay on site and not need an off-site solution. That's right now essentially really the total. And the short answer to your other question is the sites that we have found and are investigating for subsurface disposal capacity are nowhere near that in total. No. So that's part of the reason why the refinement and prioritization of the areas is so important.
May I follow up? Please go right ahead. I'll give you the exception, I suppose. Keep the momentum.
Okay, given that answer, the 600,000, and I'm going to say it's probably not set in stone yet. That's just to address the needs areas, not any future potential expansion. And the reason I ask you that is planning and zoning is contemplating, in order to have economic development in town, particularly along Route 1, is contemplating various potential new uses by having zoning changes that might impact your total. And I don't know whether it would or wouldn't. I wonder if you could address that at all.
I can address the question, certainly. Yes. The short answer to the question is that no, the scope of our study right now does not include any future development, change in use, anything that would increase flow from the town. And that is because, and I'll let Dennis correct me if or add to this if I say anything wrong here, but because the town is under a consent order from 1997, to address existing pollution problems in town. So the scope of the study and many of the previous studies have been to address that due to the consent order and the legal requirement there. That's not to say that there's no other way to incorporate future development, but it would not be part of a program that the DEP would fund at 55%, because right now the DEP's goal and therefore the commission's goal is to abate existing problems. Can anyone say that any differently or better?
I guess I would only add that all the work we're putting in, the technologies that we're evaluating, and the prioritizing of areas is, it's only at least laying the foundation for what would be needed in each of these areas. We're not casting a blind eye, to your question. It's something that, it does factor into planning, but it's not part of the current calculations, and it's not what DEP has ordered us to do at the moment. Let me see it. I'm over here. You guys have a chance to speak yet?
Not yet.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah, hi, Phil Single. I just wondered, a question probably for Dennis, what restrictions or parameters or even benefits there might be to discharge into a water course like the Hammonasset River? Just a little bit of the pros and cons of that, maybe.
You tell me you don't need the microphone. Would you like it anyway?
Let's see if I can carry the audience without any find the next person. Can everybody back here be fine?
He likes to show off.
Yeah, well, got a loud voice. A number of years doing this. Can we use it anyways? Okay.
I'll talk soft and try not to break a phone. All right, question comes down to advantages and disadvantages of surface water discharge. Getting away from where the speakers are, which is over there. Try and get in the middle of the room here. All right, the advantage of the surface water discharge would be you have a much greater capacity to solve all the problems in one location, in one situation. The disadvantage is you do lose a certain level of control of how your town develops, because you will have that ability. Now, that may be still within your control if your Planning and Zoning Commission is a strong one, and I'm guessing they probably are, because it sounds like they've got your future well in hand in terms of ideas of how to reinvigorate the downtown area and things like that. That's a positive aspect, but some towns have viewed it as a negative as well. The other issue there is you have a surface water discharge. And you can get into long and detailed arguments over whether that's a good or a bad thing. I can take you to either of your adjoining towns or several towns in Connecticut who absolutely are aghast at the concept, as well as the citizens here, that you would have a surface water discharge, even a very well-treated wastewater effluent. Other people will tell you, what's the big deal? It's cleaner than the water we're discharging into in a lot of cases. It's really a matter of preference at that point. Can you do it? Sure. Do you have to do it? We're not so sure yet. That's why we're continuing to look at subsurface disposal options, which more of the townspeople in past meetings have expressed their preference for. And did I answer all of your question, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Good.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dennis. And waiting to take a walk back here. Here you are.
Thank you. Vince Semino. I'd like to follow up on Chairman Delia's of the Planning and Zoning Commission's question. And we all know that this town is starving for economic development. And if this entire plan, which is going to, again, take us through the next 2 years, is only going to address the current needs of the town, that means we're putting off the economic development of the town for at least the 2 years. And this entire project, I think we all feel, has taken way too long. Many years ago, the Shangay Shrimp properties were identified as the best potential solution for wastewater treatment. And my understanding from discussions with Chairman Dolan is that the WPCC was prepared to go through the court process of getting onto the Shangay property for testing, for just to see what the potential capacity would be. It's already estimated to be, I believe, the best potential site in town, with potentially far greater capabilities. My understanding is that while they were going through that process, there's been another effort made to get the state to purchase that 88 acres of land for open space and to permanently make it unavailable for wastewater treatment. And I ask, is that wise, or should we preserve that potential solution and seek an immediate injunction from the court to prevent that piece of property and that very viable solution from being taken away from us? Thank you.
Would you mind taking a stab at that, Dennis?
Do I have a choice?
No, of course I don't. I think your news is a little bit out of date. The department has already purchased the property. To actually get ahead of a couple of the questions there, I was informed earlier this year that the department was approached with the potential of purchasing that. Several different divisions in my agency were each asked the benefits and detriments, including inland wetlands, coastal management, and a variety of others. We each presented our needs and the value of the property to our individual programs. Based on that, management made a decision to purchase the property. The property has gone through at this point and is no longer in the ownership of the Shawgates, to the best of my knowledge.
Dennis, just to follow up on Mr. Semino's question, could you speak to the value of the adjacent piece? I know there's been a lot of talk about these two adjacent pieces, and I just think it's, as a geologist, I think it's useful to for people to hear the story.
All right. Let me take you back a little, the history then, because this actually hinges off somewhere around here, one of the Fuss and O'Neill reports from back in the 80s. Initially, Fuss and O'Neill back then looked at two different options, one of which was discharging to the Hammond asset, and the other was its discharge to a pair of properties on the eastern part of town, which now known as the Shawgate and Shrimp properties. The properties in total were evaluated preliminarily. They seem to have a fair amount of capacity. Exactly how much, I don't believe we have the data on at this point anymore, because I don't think those documents are...
That's correct.
Yeah, those documents no longer exist, because that process wasn't followed through, because the town decided shortly after that report had come out to join the Tri-Town system, or attempt to join the Tri-Town system. That was in 1988, and they voted in 1989, as those of you who were around remember, went down in flames in Old Saybrook, even though Clinton and Westbrook voted for it. What else did you want me to cover on that?
The value of the adjacent piece,
Yes, the value of the two parcels together. Each of those two parcels had significant capacity on it. I believe the town is still negotiating with Shrimps to gain access. I don't have details on that.
I need to catch up.
Okay, so yes, there is still some capacity sitting out there on one of the two parcels. The physical geological piece overlapped the two parcels, and I'll let Chris.
That was the point that I was going to make. I just split back a couple of slides. If you look at the largest yellow parcel on this map on the right-hand side, the parcel just south of that one, just beneath that one, is the Shawgate parcel that has been purchased by the DEP. The one that is highlighted in yellow, that largest one on the right-hand side there, is still under consideration. The WPCC is currently negotiating for access to it. And what Dennis alluded to at the end of his commentary is that the previous studies basically straddled the property line between the two parcels. And the work that was done back in the 80s and years ago at this point was not quantitative enough to say how much capacity was on either of the two parcels. It looked at them together. So is it a loss that we don't have that second piece anymore? Yes. Is it a huge deal breaker that there's nothing left? The answer to that is no. I think we still have reason to believe that there's significant capacity on the adjacent piece that we are still pursuing.
Could you just clarify something? I'm lost in the translation. Is the piece of property you talked about available or not available?
The piece that he referred to is not available, but there's an adjacent piece
I got you.
that we are working on, yes.
Thank you, Christie. Let's see, come over this side. Try to be fair, I'm looking for your hands. Mr. Bandera.
Yes, I'd like to address, this commission has worked very hard on this wastewater problem. For at least the last 5 years I've been following it. At the 9/11/2012 meeting that I attended, the DEP and Mr. Greci expressed the philosophy of the DEP concerning Clinton's wastewater problem. And I agree with every item that he stated, which was, being proactive and not having band-aid solutions and not doing a lot of, and that you couldn't prove pollution necessarily on the site, so you'd be proactive on it, looking towards the future. And Clinton's, I think Clinton's jewels are its water courses. I mean, that's why a lot of people come to Clinton for the sound and the rivers and the recreation. However, at the Water Pollution Control Commission's meeting, the 2 meetings ago, Christie and Mary Jane had met with Mr. Greci and came back and reported to the Water Pollution Control Commission. And I have to admit that after hearing the report, I was shocked. I was very disappointed and shocked, and it felt like all that the Water Pollution Control Commission had done was almost meaningless. And I don't know if it was, and I have to believe it was an accurate representation, but I'd like to have Mr. Greci's response to this. I think what was reported was that other than the coastal area, Shore Road and the coastal area of Clinton and Long Hill, those 2 areas would be rated 1A and requiring off-site solutions, and I think that's great. However, other areas in town, it was simply reported that they would be monitored, and that was interpreted by a lot of people in town, including members of the board, some members of the Board of Selectmen, that nothing has to be done in the center of town, for example, because everything's fine. And the monitoring meant that the health department would simply check whenever there's a breakout and say, well, how can we fix this existing site on an existing parcel, etc. And I don't think that's being proactive. If that's the policy, I'm dismayed. I really think that the center of town, especially since it's the thing about economic development, there are businesses there that pump monthly and some weekly. And I was told that doesn't mean it's a failure in the area. And I'm surprised at that also. So Mr. Greci, have you changed your philosophy on being proactive and looking towards solutions that are not Band-Aid solutions, but solutions that you know are going to protect the water courses of the town?
I'll try and answer that question. The meetings that Christie and Mary Jane and I had were looking to prioritize, what is the worst area, what is the second worst area, and work down the list, generally discussing, you've got limitations. If we're not going to use the river at all, and that's still a consideration that you as citizens in this board have to make, then you've only got a limited amount of land capacity or land treatment capacity to utilize. And we have to sit down and discover what are the worst areas, which areas absolutely have to come off-site first. And the meetings we had were the first iterations of trying to look at those areas and say, which ones are worst, which ones are less, which ones might we be able to get away with on-site management or with upgrades of systems, or with smaller cluster systems in the immediate neighborhoods rather than moving the wastewater. That's all those are at this point. Those are nowhere near final. But we're recognizing right now that, unless we come up with some more land area that might be usable, you've only got a limited amount of capacity to utilize to dispose of wastewater off-site. How that's utilized, again, is, from the recommendations of your consultant and the decisions of your board to make.
Thank you, Dennis. I'll come right back to you. Let me work my way back here a bit.
When I look at the materials that you've presented in the presentation and I see these yellow potential places for wastewater disposal and effluent. It's not clear to me exactly, and then there are the three sort of big categories of solutions are, some kind of sewage, which is like, I presume is what those yellow spots are related to, and then sort of some modification or maintenance of current septic systems. And so it's not clear to me whether the idea is when I look at these troubled areas, if the expectation is that they will all go to a single wastewater disposal effluent place, if there will be multiple, effluent areas, if when I look at, down on the sound, and then I look all the way up to the Shrimp property, it seems like a long way to pipe, but I don't have a sense of whether those, at least from the list, it seems like you're considering very traditional systems that have been around for 100 years or so. There's septic tanks, there's traditional leaching fields and that sort of thing. I don't know whether you're considering green options, whether you're considering plant-based secondary wastewater treatment, whether you're looking at, it's just not clear when you say that you're doing all these things. I don't really know where to, my questions feel a little bit, what's the word for it? It doesn't seem to matter what my questions are now because I don't have enough information to really articulate them. And so I have a lot of different feelings about green technologies, but I have no idea whether those are the things you're considering or whether you're just looking at the kind of list that's on here and looking at, essentially ancient technologies when there are so many other new green technologies available. So I guess if somebody could just sort of fill me in on a little more detail on it.
Sure, I'll actually take the first stab at that, if you don't mind. I'm not the engineer here, but that's a great question. Coming into this meeting, being on this commission, one of the things that I find most bewildering is we all live in our homes, we all have our jobs, our families, we have so many things that are important to us. And the one thing we try not to think about is what we're talking about here today. We hope that that just keeps working. And you had mentioned, these ancient technologies that have worked out great for many, many years, but so many of them have not worked great and are not working great for Clinton. Well, that's a huge jump from the beginning of your question, but that is a great place for us to go.
What are you considering?
Well, I'll jump in. The beginning of your question was that the whole idea of us looking at decentralized and community systems is to give us, give us control over the scope and give us some flexibility to control costs for the town while still putting in place something that is sustainable. And I think that is what Dennis is asking us for, is what the state is asking us for, is to put in place sustainable technology that will work for a very long time. As Kristie has pointed out, the facilities plan is concentrating on looking at areas to put treated wastewater. So the idea, you're comparing the two maps here, and that's correct, would be to find needs areas and then find an area close by where treated wastewater could be discharged into the subsurface. So the idea would be different than our conventional septic systems that we have at our homes, in that this water would be aggregated into a treatment system, a high technology system, using all types of different technologies that we're going to be evaluating continually through this process. We've only scratched the surface. But the water that we would be discharging into the ground would be treated water. So it would be water that, I can't say it would be a removal of all of the different emerging contaminants that you're discussing, but it would already have gone through the process of having virus removal and all of the different things that our systems at home have to do in a very slow process. It'd be a more efficient system. And as these systems evolve, there'll be more opportunity for, addressing these types of emerging contaminants. One thing that I think answers the last part of the question, or at least scratch the surface, this is a conversation we're beginning here, is that by treating this water and discharging it to the subsurface versus many of the other different options, keeping it in our yards, having it break out of our backyard where our children are playing, having it run down the street where we walk our pets, having it go into the streams at the end of our roads where we may want to go crabbing, doing it this way gives a lot of control, gives a lot of engineering control, where anything that is in that water, when it's being discharged into these locations that we're looking at, we'll have a high degree of treatment, and we'll have a high degree of dilution, and we'll be isolated from all of those receptors that you're discussing. Okay, this way is taking wastewater from homes, piping it to a nearby system where it is treated in this system, and then what leaves that system is treated water that now infiltrates into the ground versus the untreated water that infiltrates into the ground in our yards. That water needs to travel through the soil and be worked on by the microbial activity before it is renovated to the point where we consider it to be safe. But this system will do all the disinfecting first. So the water that goes into the ground will have this high degree of renovation and disinfection of it, which I think is huge, because we're putting something in a designed area underground that is already treated. I'm sorry, I know you threw a lot out at me, and I'm hogging the mic here. Yeah. We're looking at several. Kristie's mentioned 3 to 5 locations that we're looking at very strongly, and then all the rest of the options are still on the board. No, we would most likely need to have several.
Is there a question? Is there a conversation? Is it a question or a conversation?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize. I fell into my own trap. Thank you for your questions. We'll continue. I see you waiting back there for a while. I'm sorry.
Hi, my name is Martin Shapiro, and I'm a summer resident for the last 33 years. I think that there's been a lot of progress. I was here at the 9/11 meeting in 12, and I think that we've got substantial progress from, I've been following this since the early 80s. What I want to ask is, now that I look at these various areas of interest or concern, there seems to be, 6 or 8 of them. Some of them, I presume, and I'm, perhaps north of 95, north of Route 1, are going to be designated for on-site disposal. So why can't you, the committee, designate those areas that need on-site disposal and put into place a plan to implement that? If instead of trying to take the highest needs first, which have been ongoing for the last 100 years, we should narrow the scope of the project by eliminating those areas of town where on-site disposal is appropriate, and let's implement an ordinance to eliminate them from the consideration of the commission. Let's get on with the job. We can get on with the job, and instead of saying we have to do the highest priority first, maybe we should do the lowest priority first and get them solved.
Thank you. I've been here for 33 years.
state. And we have determined that the two critical areas in town happen to be in the coastal area and the Long Hill area. It's been that way since the 70s. There's really some serious problems there. And Mr. Shapiro, we have not decided which it will be which. We have made no decision that we're taking north of Route 1 or north of 95 and saying that we will do nothing but be on site. These are considerations. They're not necessarily cut and dried. And I'd like to say one thing, maybe about your question about Water's Edge has a treatment system. The whole system is in the basement of the main house. They are recirculating that water, dyeing it, and they're putting it in all the toilets at Water's Edge. Other places that are using this treated water, they're using it as irrigation and watering on playgrounds. So it's a relatively safe effluent that once it comes out of a treatment plant. Does that help a little bit?
Well, I mean, certainly that's an innovative solution. I would also like to see man-made solutions that do pull out these other contaminants, that pull out chemical contamination. You know, greenhouses is one in Massachusetts, where once the water's treated, they put it through a secondary treatment system involving aquatic plants, and it really takes it to a whole other level in a way that is cost-effective and also.
Okay, I'm actually quite familiar with that system. It doesn't do quite what you think it does, and it costs a lot more than any other system out there. Trust me, I have looked at a lot of these. I did want to answer two parts of your question, so we're really clear, because you use the word green a number of times. What we're talking about up here is considered green. Doing community system solutions rather than the big pipe approach is considered a green solution both at the state and federal level, because you're keeping the wastewater near where it's generated in the first place, treating it and returning it back to the soil.
But green is, I mean, what about electricity and
Everything counts, and again, that's why it's considered green. And for those who couldn't hear, she said, what about electricity? One of the biggest costs, now, green technology, you've heard the term back and forth, it gets used and it gets misused a lot. But the basic concept is do it with less energy, do it with less foreign materials, things brought from out of town, basically. And do it locally, and do it inexpensively at the same time, and preserve the natural environment. They're all components of green. Another term is low-impact development, you'll hear sometime. All these terms get wrapped back in. What we're looking at here meets those criteria. It really will, because part of what I'm going to be doing, if and when, and I hope it's when, we get this project moving, is I'll be applying to the federal government for additional assistance based on this being a green project. And that's what they're looking for us to do, as a matter of fact.
Thank you, Dennis, for clarifying that. I think that was on all of our minds, so I appreciate it. There's a couple of hands that I haven't seen yet, so I'm going to have to make sure I grab those folks. I'll be right back to you.
Hi. Just to go to clarify a little bit of history with Mr. Vecino, that 5 to 6 years ago, when I was trying to get on the WPCC, the Shawngate Shrimp properties were still on the table. And I'd like my question to the WPCC is if you're taking into consideration the density of the neighborhoods where you're considering putting this land. I see that the Elliott School ground is still on the table. I think it's a little disingenuous of the state to take a major property like the Shawngate property off the table to protect it, yet still leave a school ground on the table. When we're protecting things, I just think children might come one step above water plants. And the other thing I would say about that is that there is so much information about contaminants that don't come through the surface of touching water, but come through odor and many other things. I'm on the Elliott grounds all the time. Even in this dry year, there are sometimes standing water. We do not want the parents of this town to have our children put at risk on the playing grounds. If that water is safe enough to go into the subsurface discharge at the Elliott Middle School playgrounds, it's safe enough to go in the Hammonasset River. That's where many of us parents stand, and I think you should remember that when you leave that on the table.
Is there a specific question, or you just wanted to make sure that your words are right?
Considering the density of the areas in those yellow spots, and the fact that children are on those playgrounds.
Is there anybody who'd like to add anything to this woman's? And all I can tell you as a member of the commission is that we're taking all these things into consideration. We're not even in the design phase yet, but our number one goal here is to represent you, the people of the town, the volunteers, and we want to do everything that we possibly can to use our experts to keep our town safe, make our town safer than it is right now, as I tried to point out before. I'm trying to get to all of you. Sir?
Well, I had 23 questions, but I won't go through them because you've answered some of them already. One thing you say here, Mr. Greci, most of these are questions for you from when you talked once before. Who are we? We are the taxpayers. It says here, we cannot keep solving these problems. Is that we, the taxpayers? We pay for it now. The town doesn't pay for it.
What are you referring to?
I don't know, I'm referring to your comments from a previous meeting on the...
I don't know what context they're being taken.
They're taking that's why we're going to have a town-wide solution.
I have to go back and see how.
Well, that was your comment.
Go to the next question.
You mentioned, and I doubt if many people here even know what it means, what a pathogenic bacteria is.
Pathogenic?
Yeah. Yes. And I looked up 35 pages of documents that discover what that is. And I doubt seriously if that's going to affect a lot of these things in your town, right here. I doubt it. You are using that as something that no one knows anything about. You probably know about it because of your background. But the average public in this town do not even know what it is. And there's 35 pages of it. Is somebody going to explain that? I doubt it. Also,
You need to stick to questions.
well, these are questions.
Okay, sir.
I asked them why, who are we? That's a question.
You asked the question, so I need to give Dennis an opportunity to, let's speak to the pathogenic,
Actually, I don't. The term pathogenic bacteria refers, as you pointed out, and I wouldn't have said 35 pages, but it's a broad category of things that will make you sick. The real simplified term.
The key word is may.
May, sure.
Key word is may.
Not
shall.
No, it's may, because you can have, 100 people exposed to the same bacteria. And I'm talking about stuff that I should be letting Jim do, because this is his bailiwick, not mine. You could expose 100 people to the same thing and maybe only half of them get sick. I don't want to put 50% of my population at risk. I don't want to put 5% of my population at risk. But I will just concede to you, yes, the term pathogenic has a much broader meaning than we wanted to represent here, because that would require basically a year-long class in, what's the right term, Jim? Thank you. There's fancier terms than that, but I know some of my staff are taking the class stuff. But,
also, you use the term that you have to make sure all the lots are correct. But you want to make sure all the soils are correct on the front properties. In the public health code, it clearly says if you have a problem, what do? You bring in sand. And that's what you've got. That's what the public health code says. Also, I have another question.
How's that?
Just spread it around a little bit.
Is that what the public health code says?
It's a little bit of
Yes, you could bring in sand, but you have to have certain conditions in the naturally occurring soil for the sand to be allowed to go right in. So you have to have certain minimum conditions of the natural soil.
It's better than that.
Well, yeah, yes, it's better than ledge, and it provides vertical separation between the things you're trying to have some spatial arrangement vertically away from. Groundwater, ledge is one as well.
Okay, folks, I want to make sure I give everybody who wants to speak a chance.
I have a
guys have to fight over it.
question. Your presentation says that you're thinking referendum sometime in 2015. So that's about 2 years from now. Do you have any estimates on budget to get through the facilities plan and get to referendum? Because the town's been under budgeting, your commission for a while, and we really beat up Mr. Dolan on that. Has that been discussed?
How we budget, you have asked us in recent times that we have prepared a budget in the past without actually looking at the expenditures, and we've been using disposable funds rather than putting them in our budget and presenting them to the town. I think going forward in our budgets, we will actually put what we estimate we are actually going to spend, regardless whether it's going to be a state-helped fund or not. But we will try to put the total quantities, similar that we did when we put something before the capital budget. We spread it out. We're going to spend $300,000 this year, $500,000 in this year, and $3 million in the following year, and so forth and so on. I think going forward, when we prepare our budgets, we'll try to take in all the money we're going to spend and not rely on going to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance in the town by nickel and diming it. Does that answer what you asked?
How much?
Have you considered a budget? As the consultant said, this is what I think it's going to cost to get through facilities planning.
We're talking about it.
So what have you talked about?
We're in the process of trying to come up with, in the next budget cycle, but the
Ballpark number? Ballpark numbers?
The ballpark number we have actually is $55 million.
Well, that's for the whole thing. Just to get through the planning stage.
Just to get through planning, through the planning portion,
You got
getting to
2
the end
years.
of our facilities plan. I believe that's pretty close to where we are. You can have Christie take a stab.
Yeah.
She's our consultant.
Yeah. We're at the beginning of a $270,000, I think, contract right now that we expect will take us through hopefully all of the site testing, and we have about $50,000 or so left in an amendment to actually write the facilities plan. If everything goes according to plan and we don't get derailed by some unexpected activities, I don't expect additional consultant fees for the next year or so beyond those.
How much
So there's a ballpark for you, the $300,000 to $350,000 over the next year to year and a half.
Is that the town's portion, or is the state reimbursing?
That's all eligible for 55% state reimbursement. Yeah, so less than half of that is actually paid directly by the town's taxpayers. Does that answer the question?
Thank you, Christie. I will get back to you. Okay. Please hold that thought.
Thanks. I think you might have just answered one part of this, but For the high priority areas, it would seem as though that you're, and based on the capacities that you talked about, you might have several mini disposal areas. Where you're headed is, how much would this cost? And I guess, is that the $55 million price? And how would the cost of the facility development, would it be targeted toward the users? Are you trying to make this thing self-funded? And then do you have any ideas to how much the user cost would be after the facilities would be developed? And last part, since I gotta give it up, is there a time when you're gonna have another, maybe when you have more information, that you'll have another one of these where you've got more details?
Yes.
Good.
The answer to that question is yes, we will.
Good.
What was the answer was first the question? That was very important.
We have not decided how we are going to pay for this in the respect that, is the town going to pay so much? Are the individuals going to pay so much? Well, how much will the state help us on this? I think Saybrook has a 50% program. For Saybrook, 25%.
What does that mean, sir?
25% is help from the state, 25% is help from the town, and 50% is borne by the individual who's having their system either rebuilt or repaired. We have not decided how we're going to handle that yet, and we won't until we find out about how much we're talking about. The 55 million was really just a wild estimate. It's almost if we had to sewer the whole town. Maybe it will be something less than that, but we don't know. But it was our best, or our consultant company's best guess on what the total cost would be to sewer the town.
Do you have an idea as to when you might have some of these cost figures?
Pardon?
Do you have an idea as to when you'd be able to present some cost figures?
No, we have no cost figures whatsoever. Yeah, there were some cost figures done in the 2003-2005 study.
No, my question was, do you know when you'd have the cost figures?
It will probably be at least a year and a half. It's in the schedule. Can we get the schedule? Oh, one more.
The public outreach and approvals is the section you're looking for. That entire section
It's called, it's labeled through 2015. That will be when this board comes back to you, I'm going to say for the final time, but there'll be a whole series of meetings that will discuss what they've come to a conclusion on. There'll probably be a couple before that in 2014 as well, but you'll have a series of meetings. This is the way it's done in every town. In 2015, that will present to you, here are the options we looked at. They'll gather some more final input from you. Here's the cost that we're considering. Here's what we've revised based on the initial input from the citizens. And then here's what we're going to go to referendum with. So you're going to see a series of those meetings occur. By the way, the schedule's written in 2015. Does that answer your question? So that's about when it's going to happen. Okay?
So I'm not sure how this committee is input other than this meeting, so I'll take a shot. The economic model that you choose for this is going to have a big difference on what it costs by the individual homeowner. So it's very important that that get on the table early in the game. And what you say in one of your slides, I find could be very alarming. It says, find the most economical and effective solution for each area of the town, followed by this prioritization you're doing. So one could project, logically, you could come back with a proposal that says, you know what? We're going to do one area of town, and they're going to bear the brunt of this whole thing. We don't want to see that as the economic model. It's a town-wide problem. It should be a town-wide solution.
Thank you.
Still have that question there? Sorry.
Thank you for indulging me with another question. I'm going to be blunt here. My motivation for being here or trying to understand what's going on is because the commission I chair is seriously looking at Main Street, West Main Street, as a potential, let's call it redevelopment zone, with greater densities to foster economic development and sustainability for this town for the next 25, 30, 40 years, not just tomorrow or by 2016. So I'm going to be direct. Based upon what I've heard tonight, I think I have the answer, but I'm not quite sure. Will your planning address greater densities in the center of town along West Main Street specifically, surrounding the Unilever property, or not? Because I don't want to waste commissioners' time if the answer is no, it doesn't. And if it might, this is a follow-up, by utilizing properties such as Shangay and Shrimp, what's to prevent the town from pursuing an alternative on the Shangay property, which you stated has been acquired by the state of Connecticut, either through a voluntary agreement with the state at some later date, or through other means? Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yep.
And to answer the last first, I don't have an answer for you. What you do with legal means with regard to the Shangay property is between your attorneys and the department's attorneys. I really can't offer you an opinion on that. What I can answer the rest of your question on, talking about economic development versus environmental requirement. The orders my department gave to the town, represented by your board, is to fix the environmental problems. If you can do that and accommodate economic growth, that's fine. But if you come to me with a proposal that says, we're going to use this rare resource, our subsurface systems, for economic growth and ignore our environmental problems, I will disapprove the report. And it will go nowhere. Okay, that's the blunt answer. If you can do both, that's fine. But the town has to address the environmental problems. If they can include your needs in their solution, that's great. I have no problem with that.
But is Route 1 a needs area?
Route 1 is partially shown, can we get back to that graphic, please? It is in sections. So the purple area and the orange area, assuming my eyes are reading the right colors, are sections of Route 1. So that's downtown, and that's called Route 1 corridor on the other side. So some of those are your areas. Will they be the most important? That's what we're trying to evaluate right now.
Maybe I can answer that for you. As far as the commission is concerned, all right, our mandate is to take care of the problem that the state has determined that we have to fix. That doesn't mean we can't look at other areas. Right now, the objective is to look at the problem areas, determine about how we're going to handle that problem. At the same time, as a commissioner, I voice my opinion about the future. Okay, not only taking care of the problem today, but I'm not going to go against the order from the state. So we're going to take care of that problem the best way we can, the most economical way we can. And we're pushing forward as fast as we can to get to the starting line. So we're at the point where we can actually start talking about the facilities, the infrastructure, how it impacts the roads, etc. So it doesn't exclude looking at these other areas. Obviously, even going forward, the Planning and Zoning Commission has some control over where we're going to put these plants, whatever you want to call them, these structures. All right. So we'll be involved with planning and zoning, not only with the current problem that we have, but we can talk about the changes at Route 1 and at the West End, working together with planning and zoning to meet their accomplishments as far as the economic development. That may mean that the state won't participate in that particular area, but, you know, it's our town. If we want to progress, we're going to have to do that.
We seem to be losing our audience kind of thing, so I'd like to cut the question and answer period down, but we'll be here to answer any questions you have if you want to come forward. We'll be here to answer all of them.
Just how do we provide input to this commission?
Pardon?
How do we provide input to the commission other than this occasional meeting?
We meet twice a month.
So how do we get it?
On Tuesday, you're very welcome to come to our meetings and participate in our meetings.
Do you have a website or?
We have a website where our minutes on. It's the Clinton website. Go to the Land Use Water Pollution Control Commission, and our minutes are posted there every 2 weeks.
Can we send emails to you guys?
Certainly.
And that's on the website. How to reach?
Yes, I believe it surely is. Vince, you want to say something?
Well, first of all, I think that the Department of Environmental Protection, the first priority should be health and public safety. So I don't understand how any other use of the Shangay property took priority over that, number one. And then, as Mr. D'Elia said, you have such a huge parcel of land there. What prevents 10 acres from being reserved for wastewater treatment, since it's got the greatest potential at this point? And also, can we see a copy of the contract between the town and the property owners, since it's, you know, our dime, and this $55 million price tag has to be paid for somehow, and if we're not supporting economic development, it's just going to go right on the backs of the taxpayers.
Okay, I hate when people ask more than 2 questions because I lose the first one. The first one was, give me a keyword.
The first one was, why can't 10 acres of the 88 be reserved for?
Actually, I think that was the second question. It is my understanding, and I do not have a copy of the document myself, that the property was deeded over with restrictions. So you have to get past those restrictions, and I'm not an attorney and can't tell you whether that's doable or not. Next part of the question?
Next part of the question is, this $55 million price tag, how are, if we're not going to have, if this doesn't address economic development at all, doesn't the price, that whole $55 million, basically, aside from any money that we may receive from the state, the bulk of it falls on the backs of the taxpayers?
Yes, that's sadly normal in most situations. The cost of the project gets borne by the people that are served by the project in general. And depending on which town you're in the state, the town government takes on a portion of the total as the general good. That number, that percentage varies all over the place, from 5% to 90%. I've seen all of those. I've done actually some studies on that. It's up to your town and you guys to decide how much of your general taxation you want on there. And also, it's up to you to decide what options you're willing to consider. As I said, I'm not sure you've got enough land capacity to do economic growth as well. On the other hand, you've had several people in your audience saying they want the Ham-and-Nest solution, which would allow you that. You have to decide as a group, as an entity, as a political body, what's most important to you and how you want to work it through. That's part of what this is all about, is getting each of you to say what's important and come to a consensus and bring it back to the department for approval.
Mr. Greci, that's why I don't understand. Before a decision was made to basically eliminate the largest potential, why didn't you come to the town and ask us, which is your priority? Is it health and safety, or is it open space? And who is it that went to the state and said, would you please purchase this land for open space? We certainly didn't.
No, the property owners did. And the property owners offered it to the state. That was that's how property goes to the state. We don't go searching for it.
Why didn't you notify us and say, we've had this
You
proposed?
were made aware of it, the town was made aware of it, your selectmen were aware of it. And as I said, each of the several different sections of my agency that had any interest in why the property would be transferred, offered commentary. The decision was made at far above my pay grade. If you want to know the answer as to why they chose after what I indicated it was a significant component here, you would have to ask them. They don't share that with me.
Can I ask you a question?
I just want to clarify something you said, Mr. Greci. You would be fine, or the state would be fine, if we built a system to accommodate growth as well as the existing needs areas. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
But the state would only reimburse for the needs area. Is that the situation?
No.
Okay, okay.
Good question.
Yes. Once upon a time, a long time ago, the answer would have been the opposite. We would have said we only provide capacity to solve problems. The laws changed. I actually lost track of exactly when they changed. But there is now provision in any design to allow for reasonable growth over the design life of the study, which is typically 20 years. And that's true of whether we're dealing with you here or Hartford, and anybody in between size-wise. So, there is reasonable accommodation. We're not going to throw an extreme example out. If you need 300,000 gallons to solve the problems and want 500,000 for economic growth, we're probably going to have a discussion about that because that's a little excessive. But if you need 300 to solve the problem and another 100 for economic growth, we could probably consider that. And yeah, Christie's reminding me, if there's capacity in the solution you have and you address the problems first.
Yeah, if you could please take that answer and spread it out among,
That's new to me.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. It is a change. It wasn't that way 20 years ago.
Well, last year I thought it was the way it was 20 years ago.
If I express it that way, I'm sorry. It's not the intent.
I got another question. Reimburse for something.
I'll be
I got it.
Thank you. Just a question in terms of how much time have you spent investigating centralized versus decentralized systems within the town itself? Meaning, rather than having one large centralized system, maybe some of the issue areas could be treated in the area itself.
Have Christie answer that.
I missed the very beginning of your question, but I think the short answer is that at this moment, the plan that we're doing by definition is a decentralized plan. I think the concept of having one treatment facility for every area and a river discharge is not a likely conclusion to this study.
Say again.
Yeah, that's distributed. Yeah, so as part of the work in refining these areas as well, there are potentially some areas where really small neighborhood kind of cluster systems might also be viable, and that's really part of the work that our before the Mary Jane's doing with the file searching and trying to balance the needs areas with the available disposal capacity in off-site areas.
So you're actually looking at all of those?
Yeah.
Isn't it possible that Shrunk and Shawngate, together with the home, could provide two treatment plants that could address both economic development as well as current needs?
I don't know anything about the capacity of the Lupone property that you referenced. I don't know if there was ever any testing done there, so I really can't comment on that. And as far as the other two parcels together, like I said, the information that was, the studies that were done on that were really preliminary, and I'm personally, and as a firm, we're hesitant to rely on the numbers that were put out there, really.
But isn't it possible that those two in conjunction could provide enough capacity for both economic development as well as addressing the current needs?
Is it possible?
It's not worth talking about at this stage, then. It's a moot issue.
What's that?
It's a moot issue.
What's the moot issue?
We're talking about Shangay and Strap.
Well, we can go after the state. We can go after the state. This is a town meeting form of government, and the town was never asked. This didn't go to referendum. This is a few individuals making a decision. It's going to affect the future of the town.
You're wasting your time.
People can still come up forward. Right now, I think our meeting is adjourned. If you want to ask more questions, you're certainly welcome to come forward.